least 12 Democratic lawmakers, including Senator Ed Markey so far, have said they plan to boycott the speech in what they're calling a night, this is a quote, a night full of lies and misplaced priorities for the American people. So, Adam, I know you and I have been around a little longer than some, and it does seem to me, and maybe it's a little bit in the rearview mirror, but it seems to me that in the modern era, for many decades, this was a rather dignified and august tradition, the State of the Union, and that it's seeming to evolve to a different place.
Well, age always gives the past sepia tones, but I too remember a time when the State of the Union was not something that lawmakers skipped, and not an event at which lawmakers engaged in outbursts that got the crowd murmuring in surprise or viewers shocked by what they'd seen. But those days are gone, and I think that they're gone. I think there's a few events that have occurred at the State of the Union in recent years that are worth highlighting.
Yeah.
And I would start with 2009, when Representative Joe Wilson of South Carolina burst out as Barack Obama, then President Obama, was speaking. We can take a listen to how that played out.
Yeah.
There are also those who claim that our reform efforts would ensure illegal immigrants. This too is false. The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegally.
And what we didn't fully hear
Yeah.
Over the noise of the crowd reacting in shock was Joe Wilson yelling, "You lie," at the president. That's
Exactly.
why we heard this ooh from the crowd.
That was the seminal moment.
I think it was a seminal moment. Then you fast forward to 2020, when Nancy Pelosi ripped up a copy of President Trump's speech after he was done giving it. And this was a protracted ripping up. It wasn't just one rip. It was multiple rips. And again, let's take a listen to the reaction, in this case from NBC News, as she did that.
A stunning moment here at the end of the president's speech. Nancy Pelosi tearing up what appeared to be a copy of the president's speech.
Yeah, that was Lester Holt with NBC Nightly News at the time. It used to be, Adam, that the options for expressing your displeasure were to not applaud, stay seated when people gave a standing O,
right,
and that the minority party's reply to the State of the Union was where you addressed your discontents and your disagreements.
You're exactly right, but we are out of that period. Can we play one more bit of sound?
Yes.
I know we don't have infinite time, but 2025, Texas Representative Al Green was escorted out of the chamber and eventually censured after he yelled at Trump during, again, the State of the Union. Let's listen to Al Green and his treatment of last year's speech.
Small business optimism saw its single largest one-month gain ever recorded, a 41-point jump.
And it's hard to make out exactly what Al Green was saying there. He reportedly said that the president had no mandate to cut Medicaid.
And you keep saying, these days are over, these days are over.
Yep.
And also I'm listening to it and I'm thinking like, well, hey, it actually reminds me of sometimes you hear what goes on in Parliament in the UK.
Yeah, it's getting closer in a way to the Prime Minister's questions,
Yes.
which is this incredibly antagonistic
Yes.
event, and it's interesting. You know, we don't have a king in this country. The UK does, and yet they are more combative when it comes to how they treat, or have been more combative when it comes to how they treat their political leadership.
Yeah.
By the way, you mentioned that you can express your disapproval of the president, or that you used to express your disapproval by sitting on your hands, and that it was in the response that the disapproval could be articulated more fully. There's also the question of what guest people choose to bring. And just to outline what is happening with our delegation, Seth Moulton is bringing Marcelo Gomes da Silva, the teen from Milford, who was arrested by ICE last year and later released. That makes a statement in and of itself. Jake Auchincloss is bringing Amanda Blunt. She's the executive director of the Literacy Center in Attleboro, Massachusetts, which teaches ESL and other classes to disadvantaged individuals to help them become self-sufficient. So that makes a statement, just a much more subtle one. Steve Lynch is going with his wife. I was calling around yesterday. Elizabeth Warren and Ayanna Presley's offices were not quite ready to divulge what their plans are for the State of the Union. So they may be participating in this rally along with Senator Markey, which, by the way, is being dubbed the People's State of the Union. It features lawmakers who have skipped Trump's inaugurations, and it's hosted by some left-leaning groups, Move On, Midas Touch, which bills itself as the world's most unapologetically pro-democracy network, and some others.
Right. So what you're outlining, yes, that was the other traditional way, is who you brought to highlight examples of ways in which you disagree with the policies of the current president.
And that's still going on.
It's still going on, but this alternate State of the Union, so-called, this is a first, right?
I don't know if any event like this has been held in the past. You know, that's a lot of history. I can't say conclusively it's a first. It is the first of iteration of this particular event, the so-called People's State of the Union.
Yeah, so it's really interesting getting the history lesson as we approach this speech on Tuesday.